Hi, in this video I want to show you how to do palm muting. That was a section out of Big Bill Broonzy's version of Gloria Love. And you might have heard when I was playing it that the bass notes had a slightly muffled sound. Now that wasn't an accident or a mistake, it was done intentionally and it was done using a technique called palm muting. And this technique's commonly employed when playing fingerstyle blues guitar. A lot of famous artists use it quite extensively, such as Robert Johnson and Big Bill Broonzy. And you tend to see it mostly in, the fingerstyle blues guitar, where you've got the thumb playing the bass notes on a regular pattern and the other fingers picking out the melody line. Often what these people do is employ this palm muting technique to mute the bass strings and give that slightly muffled sound. Now, why would you want to do it? Well, it just alters the sound of the music that's coming out. By muffling the bass notes, it reduces their intensity in the music and it lets the melody ring out more. So you're still getting these bass notes, but they're just not as overpowering and ringing out as much. Like I said, it's a common technique used in blues music, and it's favoured by a lot of artists. Maybe you don't like hearing that, maybe you do, but maybe it's just personal preference. I'm not the biggest fan of palm muting. I think sometimes I prefer to hear the bass notes ringing out, but it's certainly a worthwhile technique learning, and it can be employed really well to get this nice sound when playing blues fingerstyle guitar. When playing blues guitar, it'll be referred to as palm muting, but if you're playing classical guitar, sometimes they refer to it as pizzicato. But this can be a more confusing term because it means different things depending on what instrument you're playing. So for the sake of this video and for the sake of what we'll be doing when playing blues guitar, we'll just call it palm muting. And basically what the technique is that you're using the palm of your picking hand to dampen the strings that you're playing, or the bass strings that you're playing. And when you see it in a piece of music or in a piece of tablature, what you'll see it is with this symbol here, basically a PM written above it. That means palm mute. Now, there's another type of muting that you can get, which is called, string muting or a muted note, depending on what you want to call it. And you'll see that denoted by this symbol, which is an X on the tab. Now, this is different, and you don't want to get the two confused. The symbol with the X, so a mute note, is where you're actually muting with the left hand, the fretting hand. So you're basically not playing the string, you're just holding your finger over it to give a muted note. Like so. With palm muting, you're muting with the right hand, and that's what mute the strings, but you're still fretting the notes, and that's really the difference between the two. With a mute note, there is really no note getting played. It's just a thud on the string. It's just a muffled sound from the string. But when you're playing with palm muting, the whole idea is to give a muffled sound, but also to give the note of the string to ring out. So if I play, like, say, the 3rd fret with a mute note here, it doesn't really have much tonality to it. But if I press down the 3rd fret, put a palm mute on and play it like this, you can hear the tone of the note coming through. So it is a gentler muting of the string, and because of that you can let the notes ring out. So that's what's good about it. You hear the notes, you can hear them getting played, you're just subduing the notes slightly, or in this case, subduing the bass notes, which is done when playing it in blues guitar. So that's basically what palm muting is. It's a muffling of the bass strings when playing fingerstyle guitar in blues music. It can be done on any string to use this effect, but primarily where you see it used in fingerstyle blues is to muffle the bass strings. So that's basically what palm muting is, and what I want to do now is show you how to do it, because it can be quite a tricky technique to learn. Now I want to show you how to do this palm muting technique. So what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to achieve what I would call a gentle muting or muffling of the notes that you're actually playing. So the first thing to understand is that you're still playing the notes with the fretting hand. So you're still playing your chords, you're still playing your individual notes with the fretting hand. The muting occurs with your picking hand. As opposed to, say, playing mute notes that are denoted with an X on the tab, where you're muting with your left hand, and it isn't really that relevant where you're playing it, because you're not actually creating a note as such, you're just creating a deadened sound. So with palm muting, you're still playing everything with the left hand you would be playing even if you weren't using this muting technique. Okay, so how do you do it? Well, what you're doing is you're wanting to rest, well, it's called palm muting, but you're wanting to really rest the side of your picking hand here, close to or on the bridge of the guitar. So the first thing I'll say is make sure you've got a guitar that you can really do it on. I mean, most guitars, the bridge is exposed, but not all of them. So if you take a look here at this resonator here, this has actually got a guard going across the bridge here. You can't actually see the bridge, but it's behind here, but you can only get your hand so close. So what happens is, when you try to do palm muting, yes, you get it, but it's quite a dead sound you get because you're not getting close enough to the bridge on it. So you really need a guitar where you can get full access to the bridge, like this one. So what you want to do is you want to rest the side of your hand on or close to the bridge, and to get that muffled sound. Like so. Now, you have to be quite accurate with this, because depending on where your hand is will depend on how the string's muted. So if you're too far over this way, you know, you'll hear the string coming out, and as I move it back over this way, you'll hear it starting to get muted. So you have to move your hand to find the ideal sound about here. If you go too far this way, what happens is you start deadening the note too much. And it ceases to have any tonality to the note. So it's basically just a completely muted note with no tonality to it. So what you're looking to do is get your hand, or the side of your hand, close to or on the bridge to get this palm muting sound. Like so. So you're still hearing the tonality of the note, it's just slightly muffled. Okay, you can do this palm muting on any string of the guitar, but in fingerstyle blues music, where you'll often see it used is to mute the bass strings when you're finger picking. Now, in theory, the best way to do this would be to mute the bottom three strings, these three, and let the top three ring out. But that's very hard in practice, you know, because your hand's quite fleshy and squidgy. To actually only mute those three strings and let the other three strings ring out is very difficult, because chances are you're going to catch one of the other strings or catch the adjacent string with your palm, and that's going to mess up the note you're playing, because you want that to be played clean and ring out. So this technique probably isn't best used in Travis picking music, or at least in Travis picking music where you're jumping up to the fourth string, say like this. okay, you can get the muted bass notes, but when it comes to playing the third string on the guitar, it's starting to get caught with the side of the palm like that, and it's starting to get a wee bit of ringing on it, and just a nasty little muffled sound that isn't that good. So, like the example I showed at the start, Gloria Love, what Big Bill Broonzy does in that version is he tends to keep the bass notes on one string. So it's just, or the fifth string like this as well. Like so. And what he won't do is play any note on an adjacent string to that. So, you know, if he was going up to, say, the fourth string, he wouldn't be playing the third string as a melody note. Like so. And I think when you're using this technique to mute the bass notes, I think you have to be conscious of this fact that it's very easy to catch the adjacent string of where you're wanting the mute to be. So I think you should look to play the music where you don't play adjacent melody strings to ones that are played for the bass and are palm muted. Any other problems you're going to encounter? Well, one of the biggest issues you're probably going to encounter when you're learning this is that the angle of your hand's likely to change when you're picking. So depending on how you've learned to play, you may have your hand like this for picking in this sort of angle, a more classical approach to it. You may have a slightly more rounded angle like this with a pinky anchored or something like this. But what you will find is that, you know, any technique you're used to playing is you're not resting the hand on the bridge. So when it comes to resting the hand on the bridge, what you're doing is you're rotating it further round. So all of a sudden your fingers have to come in at a slightly different angle. Now, it's not impossible to do this, obviously, but it will take some practice. And I think that's what you need to do with this technique. It's one of these techniques that when you first try it, you think, oh, this is awful, my hand feels wrong, I can't pick the notes properly, and everything just sounds awful. But what you've got to do is really just practice and practice and practice it. And once you get the hang of it, that's it. You know, you've got it at that point, and you can just keep using it over and over again. It's not a super difficult technique to learn, but it can be a bit frustrating at the start. Okay, what I'm going to do now is give you a few short lessons that will hopefully help you learn this technique a wee bit quicker. I'm going to give you 4 lessons, and they're going to be pretty short and straightforward, but hopefully there'll be some help. First lesson, I'm going to just pick the bass strings with the palm muting on. So it's just going to be the 6th and 5th strings with palm muting. Next lesson, I'm going to start introducing melody notes on the other strings as well, whilst playing the bass notes with palm muting. Then after that, the next 2 exercises, what I'm going to do is start introducing the fretting hand to play notes at the same time and build up this technique.